All right, good morning, everybody. I have 9 on my clock, so we'll go ahead and get started this morning. Trish is actually out currently on PTO and Wonder Amongst Wonders. We're actually getting her to take it and not pop into meetings, so we're going to go ahead and roll with that today. We have, as always, a great looking group of people here, so thank you everyone for taking a few minutes out of your Tuesday morning just to run over some STAR stuff and where we are. I do actually have a brief call review for you guys this morning for a pretty cool call that happened last month. And then we'll run kind of our normal numbers and talk about the applications that are coming up. So as always, please feel free to interrupt me at any point. And other than that, we'll try to continue the win streak of getting out of here on time. So like I said, thank you to everybody who is here. I see a mixture of the STARS teams and our 911 dispatchers, our EMS agencies, and some of our Cardinal Glenham folks. So as always, a good group of people. There's Doc Laffey. All right. And we did have some transports for last month. We're going to go, like I said, one of these we're going to do a quick case review on. But we kind of continue to see, kind of a spectrum of the calls, often still device related. There's lots of obviously trachs, suctioning, and then G-tube problems located throughout here. So nothing new, but our common trend, of course, of medical device challenges in our special needs patients. And I did not have any refusals that I know of. I would like to point out, I continue to go out and teach, and every time I go out and teach, and everybody's like, oh yeah, we ran that STARS kid last month, and we ran that STARS kid last month, and I'm like, oh, I'd love to know about some of those. So please, and if you guys ever don't, if you don't mind, tell your crews, have them pop in through the STARS application and take the post-call survey. We did also put QR codes up in our ED just so you can scan it real quick while your crew is there. They can take a picture, they can get a link directly to go take the link. It's just a couple questions about the call, how the information went for them, access to the information. But at the very bottom, they also can put in a phone number, an email, and request follow-up on the call. And so, obviously we want to learn from our calls, especially any that challenged us. And it's just an easy way for your crews to notify us that they would like some feedback on a kiddo they brought to the Children's Hospital. So that resource is still always available. It works for both transports and non-transports. Obviously, we'll have a little less documentation on a refusal, but we would still have the ability to follow up with that family and get some feedback for your crews. All right. I do have just a couple kudos to give out this month. So Lincoln County gets a major kudos. We're going to talk about that call review next. I did also want to thank SCAD. They brought one of our sickest of our sick all the way down to us. And it was just another great example of that. 10 years ago at the start of my career, I never would have thought of like bypassing a closer facility for this kid ever. But this crew, they did some suctioning. They managed some O2, increased O2 demands for this kid and got her down here. And just to speak back to our theme of the medical device challenges, but the story at the end of her increased oxygen demand was that her home O2 concentrator was broken, and that's what we figured out at the end of that call. So fortunately, they were able to get that replaced, and kid was able to go back home. And then also a shout out to Rural Med, who ran one of our really sick little kiddos. And this patient had been transported from the local ED a couple times by Rural Med, but they had never actually responded a 911 call to her house. And she was really sick that day. Obviously, they got out there and realized that they needed some extra resources and activated flight and did get her down to us. She was very septic. She had increased oxygen demand, and she chose not to go the easy route. She had 3 sources of her sepsis. So obviously a very challenging call as she was sick on multiple fronts with multiple organ systems involved in. And they did a good job of quickly getting her to us using their resources. I did just want to run through that call review real quickly. So like I said, Lincoln County 911 and LCAD had this call. It was dispatched. It was a 6 in the morning trach call, which of course always gets our attention. And so the unit headed out. They did get the plan dispatched to them by Lincoln County 911. And as we can see, patient had a history of CP seizures. She is also a tracheostomy kiddo. And there you can see her extensive medications. Obviously, a wall of text. I'll kind of break down the major things here. So some key things we see. They did put the STARS number in there. They reported that they established patency on the trach right off the bat. The only thing I have to give them a 99 instead of 100, just they didn't verify placement, or at least in their documentation they didn't. I'm sure they did on scene, but just always remembering those two things we do first, where we verify the trach tube is actually where it's supposed to be, and then we prove that air is patently going in and out of it. Some other things they kind of, you can see in the patient's history, once again, that increased O2 demand as the kid is getting more and more sick. And mom had attempted to already up the oxygen delivery with no improvement. And then the crew also applied high flow O2 and then attempted suctioning with no improvement. They did also get an initial end-tidal score, which we love to see. Just toss that end-tidal on, use that as a tool to help guide your treatment on the trach kiddos throughout the call. They did, like I said, attempt suctioning. And then when they kind of noted that suctioning wasn't really getting better, they went ahead and did a trach change with a 4.5 uncuffed trach tube, replaced on the CO2, and then ended up transporting the kiddo on down. They did BVM throughout. And just another one of those examples of, just having more comfort and feeling like you have control of this call. I did some mapping, and they bypassed at least 5 hospitals to get this kid directly to specialty care at Mercy, which is where she is followed up with. So just, a major kudos, like, a 6 a.m. trach call, and like, the first thing you want to do is just find the closest place to get rid of that kid, and they did right by her. They did great care, and they got her to where she was supposed to go. So just a kudos to all the crews involved. And I believe that their agency did follow up with those medics and just told them, that they did an amazing job. So cool. And then I just wanted to, in the room for improvement section, just something we encountered last month, and as we encounter talking points that probably will apply to all of us at some point, just some information that had come up. We had some feedback on a call for one of our trach vent patients that had come in, and they were brought to us without their home ventilator. They were being ventilated by EMS's vent, and there were some questions of, like, what's best for the kid, what should we all do in that situation? And kind of what we got down to at the end of it is just talking points and guidance is that, first of all, I think this is going to be more and more of a thing as I encounter more and more EMS agencies that have vents and high-grade vents out there at their agencies. And so you'll always be forced to, should I use the patient's home vent that they're always used to, or should I use the ventilator that I always use that I'm really used to? And what do I do about that in a call? I think it is a little bit call dependent. If you show up and the kid's doing just fine on their home ventilator, and they call because they stubbed their toe, well, like, I think we're just fine with all, like, leaving them on their home ventilator. But if their vent's alarming and we're really not comfortable manipulating settings on theirs, and we're very comfortable handling that kid on our vent, I think there's room to say, okay, we're gonna switch to ours for the transport. Especially this actually was from a flight. And so then there's the question of, where, if you took the kid's home vent in the helicopter, where is it going to go safely, that we can still see it and monitor it? And there's, kind of some conflicting thoughts there, and conflicting thoughts both clinically and with the FAA about where you should put a piece of equipment not registered. And so kind of what we got to at the end is that, if that kid is sick and you need to manage them on a vent and you're not comfortable with their home vent, you should just manage them on your EMS or your HIMSS vent. The other point, though, the one of maybe the sticking points on this particular call that brought this all up was that they didn't bring the home vent at all. And we do recommend bringing the kid's home ventilator with them, even if you're going to manage them on a different device. just because it does make some difference when they get here. First of all, there's a big difference between whether we all, clear through the emergency and in the ED, we want to test them back on their home vent and see like, okay, are we actually getting this under control? The other thing that it actually will affect in your patient's clinical course inside the children's hospital is that if they don't come in with their home vent, we have to put them on a hospital vent, but that means going to a higher level of care. That it's almost automatically like you're going to go to the PICU to be managed, versus if you had your home vent, maybe you could go to the TCU or another floor. And that does have some impact for your patient and how their care goes at the rest of the stay until we can get them on their home vent. Just a kind of a talking point, like first of all, just bring the home vent with the patient. And then as far as whether you manage them on the home vent or your transport EMS vent, that a lot more comes down to your clinicians and their level of comfort. Did you have anything you wanted to follow up with on that, Doc Laffey?
No, I think what you said, we got some pushback from, I think it was pulmonology here about that. They were, so just to kind of get the other side, they were really pushing to keep the kid on the home vent and not just bring it, but actually keep him on it. But I think the way Nick was phrasing it is important. It's probably more important that you're comfortable. If you're not comfortable with what's going on with their ventilator, then you need to kind of take over. Now, switching vent to vent, there's issues with that too, with different types of settings, and they don't all work the same. And, are we sure that what you're putting them on your vent is the same as what they were at home? So you do have to be very careful about that and make sure when you make any of those switches, you're looking at things like chest rise. It'd be imperative, obviously, that you have, exhaled CO2 and all that kind of thing, so that whatever changes, it's a fairly dramatic change to go from one vent to another is not a small thing. But you have to be careful you have to be comfortable with the equipment that you're using. And again, like Nick said, that one of the big things is the way we'll tell whether or how the kid's doing is to put them in their home vent settings and see how they do. That's our measure of are they deteriorating, getting better, or what. So it's important that as soon as possible we have their home ventilator so that we can utilize it. That's our preference, is certainly to utilize their ventilator rather than have one of ours.
So we're going to grab our numbers here real quick, as our friend from Polk County says. All right. And so you can see we're up 693. We're hovering right underneath that 700 mark. Actually, I will confess it got broken here in May, but I can't count that yet. So we did have a net gain of 6 STARS patients added in the month of April. The MDs continue to approve. We did actually have some success too with some regional MDs approving plans and some of our rural districts. And then we continue to just kind of see a decent number of people still logging in throughout the month and checking plans. Obviously, I love to see that first from an emergency perspective, but I do always think, it's worth either through training or just a temporary measure at your agency of like, hey, like we're just going to log in on certain days and check in on our kids and see, if anything new's been added. We, of course, you as SP admins will still receive emails anytime a kid has been added to your agency, but as far as your care providers, that way they can be up to date with who's in their area and what's going on. And then my attendance award. So kudos to especially my dispatch agencies. I see you guys are getting in almost every day across either maybe a couple different logins, but like I said, continue to see some of our coordinators in pretty frequently and then checking on the kids. All right, we did have 7 dispatch plans last month, and so they went to these agencies. All right, and then we did also see some emergency activations. We fell a little bit in April. We're still doing some rigorous statistical analysis to figure out why numbers are down. Maybe kids are hanging out at home for spring, but just numbers were down just a little bit across the board in April as far as kids in emergencies. So. Just a brief reminder, I know I talked about this last month, but for any of you that missed it, or just a reminder that this is coming up, The Search All Stars button will go into place before our next stars meeting. So we'll do a bit of an email rollout and probably a bit of a message blast across all the different platforms. Just because, first of all, anytime we do an update, a good idea to refresh your browsers and your stars applications. And then that way you guys can be aware that there will be some slight changes on your dashboard, and you can inform any of your providers of that. We do continue to think that this is really going to simplify for those cases where you don't readily find the kid on your home screen, that this is going to be the easiest way in the world to just go find some kid from a different venue whenever you log in. You'll just click that button and it will make every plan available to you. Just a few other changes coming up. Won't have as big of an impact on the front end for anybody, but we are upgrading some of the authentication stuff in the background. You hopefully you will see a reduction in any changeover whenever you log in. And then user verification is still coming, but we'll probably have time for another meeting for it. Just a reminder that we are going to have to verify all accounts, as I discussed last month. But every email address and phone number that's in for a user, like, we're going to have to send a message and verify that that is an accurate account, somewhat, so we can remove providers who have moved on from the field or are no longer at your agencies. And then also, just to remove like any ghost accounts that are not being used. We will start out kind of slow rolling this with, for at least a month or two, you'll see only new users that you add will have to go through this user verification process. And then as time goes on, eventually we will go back and retroactively apply to each agency within the program. All right, as far as some upcoming training opportunities, we do have a little bit of training on the books. I will say I'm pretty light for the summer. So if you guys, the one that might kind of appeal to you guys, or whether you want me to come out and do trade training or some of our standard stuff for your agencies. But for instance, what Merrimack is having me do is they said, hey, can you just come out and talk about some of our sicker kids that we have in our district, talk about what's going on with them, training. And so we're going to kind of do specific to them and their stars. And I would always be open to any agency that wants to do training like that. Let's focus on your kids and specifically what you need to know for them. And maybe we can use that to expand out to some of the bigger topics just for education purposes. So, all right. Cool. And then I just want to shout out, I know Audrain County is currently coming on board, and I see Chief Goodwin here. So thank you for being here this morning, sir. And so I have a fairly short meeting this week. I'm not going to say it's because Trish is here or not here to talk and interrupt me. But did anybody have any questions, concerns, anything they wanted to bring up for open forum? Oh no, did I lose everyone?
Yep.
Awesome. All right, well, thank you everybody for continuing to work with us and for using the STARS application. If you, first of all, good feedback, I'd love to hear anything going on out there, any good stories you want reported in the June meeting. And then please also, any concerns, either call me directly, email me, or you can use the report an issue on the STARS app. But we cannot make it better if we don't hear from you guys. So other than that, everybody, please be safe and have a good day.
Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, thanks, Doug.